Hello, I'm Karla Prickett, and I'm from here in Salina, Kansas. I am really honored to be part of this Salina Biennial, and my piece right behind me is titled Elements 1 and 2. It's a mixed media collage on canvas, and it's part of a series of work I've been doing in that particular form of expression. Well, in 2014, I retired as a visual arts director here in Salina with the Arts and Humanities. I worked for 24 years with artists, all in projects, visual artists, installation work, also coordinating a juried show, 2 shows actually for the Smoky Hill River Festival here, working basically as a resource person in the region for visual artists. During that time, I really didn't have a lot of time to work on my own artwork. And I felt like I couldn't because I just didn't have the mental space and a place to do it. And so I waited until retirement, and then all of a sudden I thought, what am I going to do now? I want to do my own work. I'm looking forward to this. What is it I'm going to take off doing? And I thought it would be oil painting. I really felt like I wanted to paint, and but instead, about that same time, I inherited several things from my grandfather's architectural studio. And I admired my grandfather a lot, and as a child saw all these wonderful things in his studio and wanted to take those things and then start doing something with them. So as I looked at all of his drawings and saw that handwork from the 1920s, the lines and the curves and the script and the printing, that meant something to me, I don't know, far beyond the technology and things we have now when things are printed out so easily. And I saw all the mark making, and I just had a great respect for that. And so that's what I started doing. I looked at his drawings, I cut out elements within those drawings, and I started working with those on top of canvas. And so from there, that whole idea of honoring line and the work of someone's hand, something from the past, maybe mixing it with something current, but then pulling it all into a composition that is more contemporary, very much based on line. Right. Well, and I consider a lot of mark making to be an art. And so when I saw those drawings of his, I was just pretty mesmerized because I thought there were different elevations. It looked like the very same thing being drawn 8 different times, you know, and I thought, wow, the dedication that took. The time and effort it took to sit down and apply pencil to paper over and over again. And so when I was really young and visited his studio at home, I saw those pencils he sharpened with a pocket knife and then made them very pointed by putting them onto a sandpaper little pad thing. And I thought, wow, this is just incredible. All these little pencils, I had his apron, I had the brush. And so I'm thinking very much about what that meant to him to do this every day, and something he loved, and to kind of preface the structure that would be built from those drawings. And so when I looked at the textures in the drawings, every little brick, every little wood trim thing that was on a vent or something, those all were very interesting marks to me and became elements of art composition in my mind. And so I really have a respect for anyone who works from their hands, whatever that is, whatever art form that is. But to take those elements then, because quite frankly, those drawings could have been pitched into a trash dumpster and been gone forever. So I feel like in taking those elements from those drawings and really looking at them and then composing with them, I'm really composing with someone else's line, creating my own line within my compositions. And that's what's fun about it. And I guess when I think about what's being done on CAD, which is great, but then I think about how it used to be done, and I just think, oh, such a lost form. And so from that, the piece behind me actually was for a themed show about the elements, the 4 elements. And so I thought about my grandfather's work and how I'd been working with those pieces. And from that, I thought, well, I'm sure there were drawings done of these 4 elements, ways to track the elements, graphs and charts, and all types of things that measure those 4 elements. And so that's what became what I was kind of fixated with in working with those pieces to create this diptych. And again, there are several things in there that were hand-drawn. Some were computer-generated. But I just like the way the textures and the lines work together to make a contemporary statement about bridging the past, the present, and how we look ahead. Yeah.
I think, so it's almost collaborative, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're using, like, I like that idea of using these pieces that were made by your grandfather and then reinterpreting them. But
right.
You wouldn't be able to, it's such a great, base for building these.
Well, and when I started this piece, I thought, well, where can I find these old drawings of some of these things that I thought would represent the 4 elements? And so I did some calling to the Soil Conservation Service and various entities that I thought would have seismographic charts or their aeronautical sectional maps in here from the pilots use. But the maps and mapping is another thing because there's so many elements in it. But if you really look at maps, sometimes they're very interesting because of the textures and the lines that go all over. And so one of the kind of rules I have right now for my approaching this is to find little elements that have interesting texture and line, and then to cut them out with a pair of older scissors. So I'm also incorporating the use of an old pair of metal scissors and trimming right up against the outside line of the object that I'm wanting to cut out. So I really look for things that are enclosed by line so that I can use that line within the composition as a drawn line, if that makes any sense. But anyway, it's interesting, but the scissors had a history as well, and so those are what I have chosen to use in actually doing the cut work before I do any of the collage process.
So there's a lot of layers of history.
A lot of layers.
So these are based on the 4 elements, earth, wind, air, and fire. And this is, can you tell us a little bit more about what these represent in particular?
Well, earth, air, fire, and water, it was just the elements. It was a theme for a show. There were 4 artists invited to participate, I being one, and so I wanted to approach it with that collage technique that I'd been using with my grandfather's work. And so I guess, it was just more about the process, but trying to find things that would relate to the 4 elements and then put them in here. So I had no specific things other than what I could think of or what I could research that someone would say, this is something we use to track or to chart this element. So there are like rainfall printouts in there, precipitation maps, and all different types of land maps. I had worked at a soil conservation service at one point in my past, and so I knew they had older booklets and things with maps And so I contacted them, and they had some books from the probably early 50s that they had extra, and so I was able to find some sectioned drawings of areas in the landscape in Kansas. And so all of the examples, almost all the examples, came from actual pieces of produced paper or publication or printout. There were a couple things I found off the internet and then printed myself. The precipitation maps were those, and they are the small black pieces, little pieces you see interspersed in the work. And those were amazing. I thought they were beautiful, and it was fun to work with them. But I was surprised how many different textures and lines and things I could come up with within that theme. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, like, I love all the different patterns, but I do really love the way that those little black pieces kind of pop out and create, I think, part of that visual grid when we're looking at
Right.
it.
Well, in the whole process while I'm working on these, and it was very interesting because I had both canvases on easels, but I really originally hadn't intended to work a diptych, but it just came out that way. It just seemed to make sense after I started working on one and then started using almost the same process for the second one. One has a back painting grid that is very perpendicular. The other one has one that is not, but they seem to work the same way in the end. And that's why I felt they belong together. The process, like I said, I do an underpainting grid, and then I work from usually kind of left to right for some reason, but anyway, feels natural, I guess. But I cut a lot of parts out first. And then I'm very conscious during the process of tones, color tones in the pieces, the textures in the pieces, the line work in the pieces. And so then as I'm composing, I am taking little pins and pinning the pieces, or pinning them one over the other. I work in an area probably about this size, and then I make sure that I like that area, and then I start using the medium to attach it as collage. Then I keep working across until I get to the bottom of the canvas. That just seems to be how it has unfolded. But sometimes it gets very fun and complicated at the same time, almost like a puzzle thing. And I think this must be reflective of kind of my personality in a sense of the way I worked when I did my past positions at the Arts and Humanities. Everyone would comment on how much of a detail-oriented person I was. Well, my father was a bookkeeper, my grandfather, the architect, so I was always seeing rows of meticulous numbers and meticulously drawn lines and all those things growing up. And so I think that's why I have this minutia thing. I don't know. But anyway, it's fun. I enjoy it. I feel like I'm painting, and it goes back to that idea of I thought I would just come out of retirement and pick up my paintbrushes and go after a canvas, but that didn't happen, and this did. And so I think that is just part of that transition for me of being so detailed in my work and then being creative with that detail. So it seems natural at this point.
I was just thinking, like, one of the artists I talked to, Sophie, I can't remember her last name now, but she uses all of these found objects, and I was just curious because I asked her if, are there things that just become so, like, oh, I can't, what am I going to do with this? Like, they're so precious to her that she doesn't really know what to do with it, and until she finds that exact space where it goes.
Yeah.
And I know your medium is more personal even because it is part of your
Right.
history, but are there those kind of moments when you're working that
Yes,
preciousness?
definitely. And I finished a small, very small piece. My grandfather, in those drawings of his, I found a blueprint for a drawing board. And so I did a small piece about it, using just every one of those elements that he had drawn for a drawing board. And so there were some things in there, like a little brass ruler that was his, the sharpening little wooden pad thing with the sandpaper, a thumbtack, several of those pencils that he had shaved off, and they're about this long. And I think he saved them all because, you know, you could put them in a compass and still use them. And so those things are amazing. I mean, just seeing them as objects and looking at them the way they are and thinking about how they were used and why they were saved. You know, I don't have the heart to put them in the trash, you know, not at all. So I think honoring some of the work of a person's hand, whatever that is, takes that, honors it, and respects it, and yet it becomes a contemporary message or a story in a whole new way.
That's great. 2 minutes. Okay, so I have been asking all of the artists, specifically with this exhibition, it is the art of the Mountain Plains, contemporary art. If you just wanted to finish up by talking a little bit about what it means to you to be an artist in this region.
I guess for me, it means, I look at the word artist and I think it doesn't matter where you are. I feel like there is strong work being done everywhere. And sometimes the assumption is you need to go to a coast. But right here, with the horizons we have, there's nothing blocking your mental process or your vision. And there is just this different openness that you feel as a creative person. And I've had a lot of artists who do live on the coast talk to me about that, and how when they come to the mid part of the country, it is a totally different experience. So I'm happy to be part of the middle of America and part of a group of artists, and totally honored to be included with this amazing exhibit and all the work that's in it and all the artists. And it's just great that this is here. It's great that the Salina Art Center is hosting a competition like this, and that regional artists have such a great opportunity to create work toward something, and to be part of something, and to be a really collective voice for this part of what's going on in the country. So it's wonderful. Thank you.